The San Francisco Shock once again make headlines by making a couple of additional roster moves that were rumored to be in the works. Here on the eve before the start of the Overwatch League summer stage, the San Francisco Shock parted ways with Vindaim plus Heesang, which happened yesterday. Along with that, they replaced them with support players Lukemino and Renko plus DPS player from O2 Blast, Probe. There is a lot to digest here. I mean, what are the Shock cooking? What does Krusty have in mind here to warrant these very interesting and maybe unexpected changes? I mean, man, how crazy is it to already be releasing players that could be potential stars in the making this early on with this core that you only assembled at the beginning of this season? It really makes you wonder what the heck Krusty's cooking over there, because he's going for more Western players. It seemed like we were past that with how they built their roster at the beginning of this year, but for whatever reason, Krusty just can't live without at least a couple of American players on his team. It is tradition with the Shock to do this every single year. They just play better when they're mixed, so maybe that's Krusty's mindset. I feel pretty conflicted on this matter. On one hand, changes definitely did need to go down, but at the same time, I don't know if these specific signings are enough to significantly increase their potential and get them back in the race for a potential championship, or at least to make a deep playoff run. Vindaim as well as Heesang probably needed to go, or at least move over to the bench. Those guys really were not contributing. They're definitely part of the problem. Vindaim, he was feeding a lot on San Francisco this year. His positioning was questionable to say the least. Him and Finn just weren't synergizing the way that you'd hope they would. And with Heesang, he just hasn't been the right complementary piece to Proper. It's not to say that him or Vindaim are bad, terrible, washed up players. I think they both have very high ceilings, they're both super skilled, and they could probably make a difference on a different team. It's just that in the Shock system in particular, they weren't working out. And it would seem there's a possibility that we'll witness both of these players get a brand new chance at life before the season even comes to a close. Heesang, we already mentioned earlier, is on his way to Vancouver to be the replacement DPS. If you want to hear my full thoughts on this move, make sure to check out my previous video on it. I will leave a link at the end of this one if you're interested. And with Vindaim, nothing is confirmed, but I have heard there is a chance he could be moving over to a new team. The Seoul Dynasties like the rumbling that's been going on within the community. I don't know for certain, but if he were to go to Seoul, in theory, I think it'd be really great because he already has such great experience with that team. He is great under Coach Toby. He could be a good replacement for their main support problem, and at the same time, he could look more like the player that we saw 1 year prior. Evaluating the team from top to bottom, those were like the two most noteworthy, standout places where the Shock just felt weak. Their idea on how to fix this? To go more towards the Western route, plus Probe to take over the hit scan duties. And this just feels so weird. Lukemino and Renko come into this team, they just feel so out of place. I don't really think I have to explain it, right? It just feels weird to have them on this O2 Blast team, basically. To go towards this Western route, with unproven players, mind you, is a very interesting decision being made by Krusty in the higher-ups. It's not to say that there's no chance at all that it's going to work out. We've already seen stuff like this be perfectly fine for them. Like we saw them find success with Mikey last year in Kaluj and in previous seasons as well. They've always done well with Western talent. And sometimes we do fall into the trap, me specifically, of considering a player to be bad just because they're on a bad team. And it might not actually be true at all. Lukemino with more resources around him could be a beast. But can he be that star level support, you know? Can he have that type of ceiling that elevates the Shock to that level of the championship contenders? Lukemino's a decent player, sure, but that is a lot to ask of this guy. He doesn't quite have that potential, at least in my eyes. Now, to be fair to the Shock, you don't exactly know who's available. There's obviously some solid flex support prospects out there out of Korea, but how are you going to guarantee that they make it to the country in time? How do you get them to not play on ping before the season and the playoffs start? There's way too much on the line here to try and make this kind of risky decision, so in a way, it's understandable why the Shock would go this route. This is a safer option. This gives you a lot more of a guarantee factor. Because they're American players, you can get them right to your team facility right away. And like I said, this is the Shock's bread and butter. This is how they always seem to find the most possible success. That's what Krusty likes the most in his system. He likes having the mixed bag. That's what seems to yield the best results with his team play and his chemistry for whatever the heck the reason. So even though it feels very, very weird, if there's one team that I trust to maybe have it work out, it's probably San Francisco. This year feels a bit different than others just because of all the dysfunction going on with their gameplay, but maybe this is the change of pace that they actually need. Honestly, what piques my interest more at this current point in time is how the support trio works together. All of their skill sets feel pretty similar, at least on paper. Lukemino, I'm assuming, is the main support of this team. He has played some of that with Vegas Eternal before and in the past, so that would make the most sense. But what's the Shock's game plan with Finn? So far, he hasn't been himself this season. Does that mean he's going to come off the bench and they're going to start Renko with a total Western support backline? Or are they going to do a mixed approach? Is Finn going to play alongside Lukemino, and then Renko comes in perhaps for double flex support metas? Or option C, is Krusty going to be a complete weirdo and have Finn play like DPS or something? I don't know totally what's going on there, but this backline situation is definitely something to keep your eye on. Looking at both of these new individual players at the backline, Lukemino, he played okay on the Eternal. He was one of the only guys that didn't always get constant criticism, I'd say. He was solid during his contender stays as well. He's a flexible player. He might bring some well-needed versatility if he can actually mesh together with the rest of the San Francisco Shock. Who you may not know as much about though is Renko, a flex support player who's been playing on Redbird esports for quite some time and is a mainstay in North American contenders over the last 3 or so years. He's a solid Zen and Ana player, and while it's hard to say how that'll translate against top-level flex supports in the league, he's a decent option that brings some good playmaking to the table, and bare minimum, you could have him come off the bench or maybe pressure Finn to play better. Maybe this is what Finn needs to wake up and play more so like the guy we saw 1 year prior. Having that pressure of knowing that somebody could take your job could help him play at a much higher level that the Shock know that he can go to. Or for all we know, Finn just gets benched entirely right now, and Renko ends up being the answer they need to give them that fresh mindset and approach to play at a slightly better level. Renko and Lukemino don't necessarily feel like they're in place here, or that they're gonna be the guaranteed saviors that put the Shock back into relevance, but it's better than doing nothing. I think that's how you have to look at it if you're a Shock fan. Krusty's made these choices in the past. A lot of the time they have benefited you, so just trust him and see what happens, I guess. Now, on the bright side, Shock fans, your team did make a decent attempt at upgrading your DPS line. That has oftentimes been a complaint of the Shock so far this year. They're lacking a hit scan. They need to get another one. They need a sniper. They need to make proper just focus on the flex things. And well, now you have it. You got Probe. At the young age of 18 years old, his potential is through the roof. He's in the prime of his gaming career. He's been making big time plays on O2 Blast for years now, and he fills out all of your typical hit scan needs. He's a pretty solid prospect to be taking a chance on, but it does potentially come with some risks. For starters, we don't even know if Probe will be able to make it to his team in time this season. He could be stuck in Korea this entire season playing on like 200 ping as the hit scan player, and obviously that's no bueno. That's a tough challenge. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't love the guy's Sombra play either. It's not the worst in the world, and it could definitely be better than what Heesang did, but I don't know if it's necessarily a massive upgrade. Just looking at what he did during the Eastern knockouts, it wasn't anything out of this world. It was just okay. And that could be problematic because that's where the meta is right now. Tracer Winston Sombra is everything, and if you can't play it, you're gonna get rolled. Can you have good EMP timings? Can you synergize better with this team than Heesang did and have the correct timings? You've played with a bunch of these guys previously, so it's time to show it. There's a lot of pressure on this kid. He may have played with this group before, but they're really depending on him to show up as a good Sombra player while being on high ping and playing from Korea at such late times while knowing that there's a chance he could never make it to America this year. That's a lot to ask for, and we can only hope that this guy doesn't crumble under the massive expectations that are being put on him. Tomorrow and beyond is going to be very interesting. Make sure to pay extra close attention to the San Francisco Shock because their legacy, their jobs, and their season is on the line. This is it. It's time to put up or shut up. There's a lot of questions that have to be answered. The new guys have to show that they can be reliable, and the old guys have to try and perform at an even higher level. There's a bunch working against the Shock, and time's running out, so this is going to be one heck of a battle. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got for you in this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a like, and subscribe to this channel if you want to stay up to date with all of the most recent Overwatch League news. And be sure to let me know what you think of the Shock as well as Spitfire moves down in the comments below. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.